We gather here tonight to bring women back to their rightful place.
The Testaments, a new Hulu original series from the executive producers of The Handmaid's Tale.
It's easier to accept a story than believe that the people around you are monsters.
The battle isn't over.
There comes a time when you have to take action, when you have to choose your own destiny.
Never quite as it seems. Watch the new Hulu original series, The Testaments, streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, what is a very fragile ceasefire, if that, will it last? Well, the Democrats seem to be trying to undermine President Trump at every turn. Here is Senator Andy Kim. He's a Democrat of New Jersey. And he's suddenly saying that President Trump is a lunatic. What, for trying to get rid of the worst terrorist regime in modern history? He's a lunatic? I'd say they're a lunatic for somehow wanting the regime to stay in.
Would you support impeaching the president, or has that just been there, done that, don't want to do that?
Well, look, as I said, think he is unfit to be commander-in-chief. I think he should be removed from office, and I think the American people are going to
impeachment is the way to do that, though.
Oh, and look, and we understand how steep of a curve that is with the Republicans right now in Congress. I mean, like, his cabinet is just doing everything they can. They're just sycophants that are just falling at and bending a knee to him. We see Speaker Johnson just kissing the ring. So, we have to be realistic about that in terms of what is tactical. But I think the American people deserve to hear and need to know that there are leaders in Washington that want to stand up against a president that is reckless and out of control and against what the American people want.
I would say that the American people want freedom. And this guy, I would love to say, could we have taken a poll of the American people after Joe Biden's debate performance? They weren't talking about 25th Amendment. They were like, no, he looks great. What are you talking about? And then they were doing the old switcheroo with Kamala Harris. Remember that whole deal? I mean, that was so completely disingenuous. But listen to J.B. Pritzker. This is, of course, the guy who hates ICE, fights ICE at every turn in Chicago, in his crime-ridden streets of Chicago. Remember when Sheridan Gorman, the Loyola college student, when she was horrifically just killed by an illegal immigrant, when she was out there late at night on the pier looking at the northern lights with her friends, and this illegal immigrant comes upon her. And then remember, it was the Chicago alderman who said, well, maybe Sheridan Gorman startled that nice, sweet illegal immigrant with a criminal history. Well, now J.B. Pritzker seems to find the time to speak out against President Trump, and he's saying that maybe he's mentally unfit. Listen to this guy.
So much of what he says is unhinged, and think about what that's done to our credibility around the world. The fact that he really doesn't sometimes know where he is, he doesn't know who he's talking to, and doesn't realize the world is listening when you're president of the United States. So it's fine to have private thoughts about things, but to share them randomly in public, frankly, is a frightening prospect for the future of our country. So you hear it every day, too. He says things, he reveals things that he shouldn't. He threatens things that he, puts us in danger as a result of. And I just find it, from one day to the next, honestly, he not only is he ruining everybody else's mental health, trying to follow everything that he's doing, but his own mental health is in question here. And so that's why I think the 25th Amendment needs to be seriously considered and invoked. We've seen it day in and day out. We've now seen him as president the second time around. I don't know whether it's age, there's some kind of dementia going on, but clearly something is wrong with the man, and the people closest to him should know that, and they're the ones who can invoke the 25th Amendment to remove him.
That's stunning. From a guy who seems to be an apologist for illegal immigrants, a guy who seems to be nasty as all get out, and yet he doesn't like Donald Trump talking tough to terrorists and bringing them to potentially to a peace table. I mean, that's amazing to me. That is absolutely amazing to me. And here is Professor Alan Dershowitz. We had him earlier on Katz and Cosby with me and John Katsimatidis. And Professor Dershowitz was saying this whole 25th Amendment talk, well, it is nonsense. Listen.
I would think that the Democrats who are calling for the 25th Amendment ought to be rebuked, and they ought to be sent back to law school or elementary school to understand what the 25th Amendment's about. Of course, it could never be invoked here because you need a majority of the cabinet or the vice president, and the vice president, not or, and the vice president, or then you need there are other safeguards. So I don't think there's a risk that the 25th Amendment could be invoked, but shame on anyone who says it should. It's an absolute distortion of the Constitution. I know what the history of the 25th Amendment is. I've read the legislative history. I know what it was intended to do. It was intended to be, when we were kids, there was always that box in the school with glass, and it had an axe in back of it, and it said, open only in case of emergency. Yeah, well, that's what the 25th Amendment is. When you have a president who's had a stroke, a heart attack, or anything like that.
And you heard him. This is not what it's for. But the Democrats don't care. It's like they're just trying anything they can to undermine this presidency and try to have some sort of impact, if they think, on the midterm elections. And speaking about the Democrats, so much of their soft on crime policies are just a revolving door of justice. We have seen it. And I think one of the worst cases that I've seen of late about twisted justice is the case of Sergeant Eric Duran. And I want to hear your thoughts tonight about that. Obviously, Iran, anything else. This is a shocker. An NYPD Sergeant Eric Duran, he had been on the case for many years, had an unblemished record. He was on the police force for 13 years. About 11,000 officers from around the globe signed a petition for him to avoid jail because he had thrown a cooler at a drug dealer who was speeding away on a motorbike in the direction of two other officers who were making another arrest during a drug bust. So to stop the drug dealer from going after the other officers and endangering other citizens in the area, the sergeant threw a cooler at the dealer. What happened was a water cooler, and it had stuff inside. It knocked him off the bike, and the guy suffered fatal head injuries. Obviously, it's horrible what happened to the man. There's no doubt about it. It's horrible, even though the guy was a fleeing drug dealer. And even the sergeant said he felt terrible that the guy had died. That wasn't his intention. His intention was to stop the guy from potentially causing harm to the other officers and citizens. It was, I believe, an accident. Very clear and simple. It was an officer trying to do his job to stop a bad guy. And what happens in this particular case? The officer gets arrested. There was a case before a judge, and the judge convicts him of manslaughter, the sergeant, and sentences him today to 3 to 9 years in prison. That is shocking. He was making a good faith move to try to stop a fleeing drug dealer and to protect other officers and citizens in the community. This to me is an utter disgrace. And he also said that the guy should go to prison immediately. So you've got a cop with an unblemished record prior to this who it was an accident that the guy died. The goal was to stop him. You have a split-second decision. What do you do? The guy had just been involved in a drug deal. This is the fleeing suspect. And this officer reacted trying to stop the drug dealer. And what happens now? He is getting thrown into Rikers. This is a frightening scenario with gangs roaming wild. The guy's a gang member, apparently, who died. This could not be worse. And the fact that this judge, who was appointed by Bill de Blasio, this judge came out and said he is specifically sentencing this sergeant to send a message to other cops to be a deterrent. I say, to be a deterrent to what? To be a deterrent what? To make sure that other cops don't do their jobs and try to protect society and other officers? This is a real travesty of justice. And earlier today, we talked with Vincent Valalong. He's the president of the Sergeants Benevolent Association. And this is how he described this decision by this rogue judge.
This is probably the darkest day in the history of my profession. I've said this over and over again to the reporters. There is no other way to categorize it. What took place here today, you have an individual that has a pristine record. So who actually gets when a judge looks at everything in totality, who is that person that gets that benefit, if not an individual like Eric Duran? You know, I'm incensed, and I'm kind of like a little deflated right now because I've been screaming all afternoon. But when a judge says, "I believe the sentence will deter other officers when they arrest suspects," what is he saying to law enforcement across this country? The only way to stop him was to let them go. I don't understand how these people come up with these ideas on how it is that policing takes place. You know, Eric Duran is a great cop. He's a great family member, and like the governor said, you know, he was not a flight risk. He's been at every single court appearance. When have you ever seen anybody turn around to a victim's family and apologize the way he did today and not have a tear in your eye? I'm overall disgusted by everything that's taken place today, and I'm kind of lost a little faith in the justice system.
I think a lot of us have. That a judge says that's the way to create a deterrent. What? To make sure that cops don't do their jobs, try to make their best decision at a split-second moment? Let's go to Joaquin on line 3 in Pennsylvania. Joaquin, your thoughts tonight.
Rita, I'm kind of on fire about this, but I do want to make one comment because Mike lit me up also. And, you know, I saw a clip yesterday of Marco Rubio, Dan Bongino, I guess, had put it out. And Iran was going to develop a dome. They were just on the precipice of having a dome that would have been able to stop anything coming into that country. So this had to be done now. And I guess Mike wants to live under Islamic rule is what he wants to do.
Because he hates the Jewish. This is the first Mike. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's like anti-Jew. Jews are Jews. It's raining today. It must be the Jews' fault is his feeling. That was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the Sergeant Eric Duran, my heart goes out to him. I don't know what to say. That, you know, there's been so many officers actually that have been really done wrong in blue jurisdictions over the last couple of years, but this is really a travesty. Within his rights, he probably would have been able to shoot the guy, or somebody would have been, you know. And I unfortunately don't have much compassion for the, for the criminal. But unfortunately, I consider him to be a POW actually, because we have a war in this country going on, which is right against the left. And I hate to say it, you know, their hope is that the correctional department will put him into Bellevue. I don't think that's going to happen because I'm sure that the higher ups in the state of New York are going to say, no, he has to go to Rikers. You just watch and see what happens with that. I'm sure that that's what's going to happen. And that's a sad state of affairs, and that's showing what the left in this country actually is, and the left in New York State. And this is just such that man should never even have lost his job to begin with, much less go to prison now.
Right, and you're sending a cop. Even though obviously I'm sure he's a savvy cop, he was dealing, with drug areas and, drug crimes and all that. But you send a cop to a place like Rikers or any prison in this country, and someone who's tied to the death of a gang member. There are gangs in there. There's rival gangs. They know. Oh, good, the cop's in the prison. I mean. That's a big old neon sign for trouble. And this guy, all for doing his job. Not only do I worry so much about Sergeant Duran, I worry about all the other men and women in blue that are out there that see this and go, gosh, that guy was just trying to do his job. Now this judge is sentencing him. And how are they not going to be like second guessing themselves now next time something happens? And that could be catastrophic for them, for the community, for their fellow officers.
Well, this is the whole thing now. If you look at the history of any communist takeover in the country, they destroy the society by allowing the criminals to run free. And this is exactly what's going on here. And we have to really wake up and see this. And I don't understand. There's got to be a way that somebody can intervene on this, President Trump, because this man is now really a prisoner of war. is what he is. Because and look at Irina, her last name I believe is Ruska.
Zaruska, the woman in Charlotte, Zaruska.
Yeah, I mean that guy was let off today, basically. That
yes.
He's not competent to stand trial.
Right, he's not competent to stand trial, but he's competent to be out on the streets as a repeat offender over and over again. Joaquin, I agree with you. This is like so troubling, and it's such a problem with the justice system, and it just shows there's so many layers to this, because we're also talking about the layer of a judge. This was a bench trial, so this was a judge who made this decision. The prosecutor was this guy. His name is Guy Mitchell, but essentially it's the state that went after this cop who had an unblemished record. And we just have to pray that he wins on appeal. And there's another solution. And I'll talk about what could also happen that could be good news for this cop. We're going to talk about that after the break. 1-800-848-9222. And Joaquin, thanks so much for the call. You're terrific. I know how much you support our men and women in blue.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. This is the Rita Cosby Show.
Well, it was wild today and an extraordinary moment. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, with the First Lady of the United States coming out saying, I have a major press statement, not telling anybody what it is, but everybody was tuned in for this. And boy, you could tell she's coming out swinging for anybody who is connecting her to Jeffrey Epstein. Listen to what Melania Trump said.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I've never been friends with Epstein.
I've never been friends with Epstein. And she also said that she's putting those on notice that they should not be maligning her. She said she didn't meet Donald Trump through Epstein. Whoever made that one up, she said, that's hogwash. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the Duran case. Sergeant Duran, he's a hero. He should not be behind bars. And I'm going to tell you what the Governor Patterson, said of what he would do if he was still governor.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Rita Cosby is on.
And everybody talking about this decision by a judge to sentence Sergeant Eric Duran of the NYPD, who was trying to protect other cops and citizens. It was during a drug bust, and a guy came by on an e-scooter riding in the wrong direction. He threw a cooler at him, so that guy couldn't head into the area of other officers and also civilians. The guy died. The guy was a gangbanger and also a drug dealer. And obviously, Eric Duran, the sergeant, felt bad that the guy died, but he also was trying to make a split-second decision to try to save the officers' lives. And a lot of people are talking about this horrible decision by a judge. We've talked about some of the crazy decisions that have happened against President Trump, but this judge in New York, it's a disgrace. And here's the statement from the Sergeants Benevolent Association saying, quote, today will forever be remembered as one of the darkest days in the history of our profession. It wasn't only Sergeant Duran, a great cop who was on trial. Every law enforcement officer who makes a split-second decision in the performance of their duties to protect the public was also on trial. And earlier on Katz and Cosby, we talked with Judge Richard Weinberg, and this is what he said about the judge's decision. He said he would have let the guy go. He wouldn't have even convicted him. Listen to this.
Number one, if I was a judge trying this case, remember this is a bench trial. There's no jury.
Now you're going to talk about judges?
No, I'll talk about this case. I would have acquitted him on both counts. Number two, if he was convicted, there's no reason with his roots to the community, with his diligent service all these years, an honored police officer, that you have to remand him. I would let him out pending the appeal.
And he's talking about Sergeant Eric Duran, who was on the force for 13 years. Well, here is also Governor David Paterson, former governor of New York. And we asked him, what would you do if you were governor now? Because remember, the governor has unique powers. And this is what Governor Paterson, a Democrat, said.
You haven't been governor in a few years. If you were governor right now, what would you do?
I would have either commuted his sentence immediately so he didn't serve time and then just left the charges the way they were, or I would have pardoned him.
Bravo. The question is, would Kathy Hochul do that? I don't know. She's in an election year. She seems to be catering a lot to Zohran Mamdani, Democratic Socialists, and others. And remember, a number of them have had these defund police policies. That's putting it mildly. It's a tough year to be a cop. And this needs to be called out. This needs to be won on appeal. This needs to be, hopefully, maybe the governor will do the right thing. That would be a good thing. Well, joining us now is Norman Seabrook. He was president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association for many years and a great former law enforcement officer. Norman, thank you so much for joining us here on the show, on the Rita Cosby Show. Norm, fill us in on what's sort of the latest. And first, your reaction to this just terrible decision, I think, by the judge.
Well, Rita, first and foremost, thank you for having me. And I think the first thing that the governor of the state of New York will not do is she will not make a move because she's worried about reelection and allowing herself to be separated from the Black and Latino community. So that's number one. Number two, I think that's very, very important that people need to understand is that this sergeant, the detective that went out there to do the job of protecting the Blacks and Latinos of the community of the Bronx did not go out there in anticipation of killing or involving himself in something that would have resulted in a death of an individual. The third thing that I think that's very, very important is that people seem to forget is that the people of the community continue to cry for help in our communities when Black and Hispanic kids are shot down by bullets in the streets of New York. The fourth thing that I'd say is that this sergeant was a leader of a task force that allowed to take 50 guns off the streets of New York. And if you take a 9mm and you put 10 rounds in each one, that's 500 rounds that could have been killed by a Black or Latino child killed in the Bronx. The fifth thing that I'd say is more importantly than anything else is that this individual sergeant did not go out there to do that. He did something in anticipation of protecting the community, and unfortunately, this happened. He didn't pull his gun. He didn't shoot his gun. He didn't try to strike this person down by just shooting off stray bullets. Something happened. It fell astray, and at the end of the day, this young man died, and I'm sorry for the family of this young man that died, but at the same time, think about all of the people that were killed by the things that continue to go on in Bronx County, Queens County, Kings County, all of these counties around the city of New York. I think that the sixth thing that I'd say, Rita, is that's very, very important is that this individual sergeant is now housed at Rikers Island. But I will tell you in full disclosure, as I spoke to some individuals, that this individual now is housed at what's called I'm not even going to say where he's housed at.
Yeah, don't say, but he's in sort of a separate area. Is that safe to say?
Yes, that's safe to say.
Good.
He has a television. He has a telephone. He has his own shower. He will be escorted to and from by a supervisor and a correction officer. He's in good hands right now until the appeal comes in play, where he's allowed to continue to fight the case from the street as opposed to fighting the case from behind the gate. Rita, you know firsthand how I believe so much for correction officers, police officers, firefighters, the blue-collar worker of the cities of New York. And what you do is so important to us. What John does is so important to us. And I think that some people seem to forget something here. And the most important thing is that they forget here is how many black lives really matter.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And Norm, you're an African American and as someone who's been in law enforcement a long, long time. And you bring up a great point. This is a guy who was in the community trying to protect the community. And yet this happened. And to me, this is shocking that this judge made this decision and said, this is a deterrent. What is he saying? It's a deterrent from? A deterrent from what? Law enforcement doing their job? And what kind of impact does this have on law enforcement in New York and around the country? Because this petition to hopefully keep Eric Duran out before the judge came down with his decision, there were 11,000 officers from around the world. This case has really touched the globe because there were so many officers who say, we just make these decisions. And it was a terrible accident that the guy died, but the officer was trying to do his best. So what message does this send? What kind of chilling effect could this have on officers, sadly, Norm?
I think that this sends an effect of the de Blasio administration has set a precedence in the city of New York that hands off, do whatever you want, have a nice day, and whatever it is what it is. But you see, the problem that we face with in the city of New York is that people forget safety and security is number one. We seem to forget that there is a thin line between love and hate. We all get that. But at the end of the day, you take a guy like Raymond W. Kelly, someone who was loved by everybody. This man could do no wrong. And he did his job the way that it was supposed to be done. And that's why I respect the present police commissioner, Tish, for doing the job that she's doing. But something is missing here. What's missing here is that the public doesn't really understand what the police officer, correction officer, firefighter goes through. When a firefighter saves a black child or a Hispanic child from a Bronx fire 5 stories high, they don't care about that. It's a one-day story. We don't honor that. But 343 of them were lost in 9/11. They don't care about the police officer that goes into a gun battle and saves 5 or 6 young kids that are shot in the parks, in St. Mary's Park or Bronx Park East or Williamsbridge Park. They don't care about that. We seem to forget that. But I will say this to you, Rita. All of the listeners listening right now know that they are the ones that want the police protection in our communities, but we have to support them. We have to support them. We have to come out to the courts and tell those judges that, hold on a second, man, you're making a mistake here. He took 50 guns off the street. If you take a 9mm with just 10 rounds in it, at 50 guns, that's 500 rounds. 500 rounds that could have been shot and killed by a young black or Latino child or a white child or an Asian child on the streets of New York City, simply because this man was so aggressive. He didn't have no disciplinary action. He didn't have something. He did not go out here trying to destroy the life of someone. He went out here trying to protect the community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. Get in the head of the law enforcement. And you know what's amazing to me, Norm, and everybody, we're talking to Norman Seabrook, who was president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association for many years. And Norm, how could a judge, you would think a judge would know better. They understand that police officers have tough jobs. I mean, get in the head of the law enforcement and also defer to the officer. When I say defer, listen to, okay, if he's saying my goal was not obviously to kill this guy, my job was to stop this guy so he couldn't create further harm. To me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if it had been in a jury trial and I was on the jury, I would say, I can't convict this guy. You know, I think he genuinely made a mistake. It's a terrible tragedy. I feel bad for anybody losing their life. But, and yet that's not what happened here. In this case, they went after him, and to the point where he's behind bars. You have a cop behind bars. I mean, this is shocking that a judge doesn't know better.
I think part of it is because the judge gets in his or her car and drives to his or her home way away from the South Bronx, way away from the violence and the effect of the community, of the drugs, the crack, the epidemics, the gang violence, and everything else. Listen, I'm not taking anything away from what the city is trying to do to rebuild us, to make us better. But I will say this, and I think this is very, very important. We've got to be able to have a line of communication, and I think that WABC gives us that line of communication. Some people may or may not agree with it, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. We're in uncharted territories. And being in uncharted territories, and Rita, you're an expert. You've been in Afghanistan. You've watched people be executed. You've been there, done that already. And people don't understand that. And the reason why they don't understand that because they never heard that from us before. And I think that at the end of the day, we have to allow ourselves to establish some type of communication between the public and the police. And the police are being subjected. And these same police officers are children of mothers, fathers that live in our community.
Yeah, I agree. And we need to love and appreciate them and appreciate they're just trying to do the best they can to protect all of us. Norman Seabrook, thank you so much. And thank you for your great service, my friend, with the Correction Officers Benevolent Association. Always great to get your perspective. Thank you so much, Norm.
Thank you, Rita. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. And everybody, I'm going to go to your calls now. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Al in Yonkers on line 5. Go ahead, Al. Your thoughts tonight.
Yeah, hi, Rita. You know, it's unfortunate for the sergeant. Years ago, decades prior, policemen would take their chances when they were indicted for a crime in front of a judge as opposed to a jury, especially in these boroughs that are not favorable to law enforcement.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially in blue areas, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely. But it's unfortunate. I do think that the sergeant will probably have to do some time. The governor, if she wants to intervene from a political perspective, she can't. She's in an election year. She'll be in a tight race.
But Al, you know what's interesting? I'm going to flip the coin on that because think about how brilliant it would be from her politically. First of all, it's the right thing to do. That's my belief. My belief is what Governor Patterson said, that, commute or pardon this guy immediately. So he gets out immediately. That's one. But I also think it would be actually a very smart thing for her because she's worried about losing her Democratic Socialist friends with Mondani and others. But also she's got a challenge from Bruce Blakeman, who's the Nassau County executive. He's the GOP nominee, and he's going after her saying she's soft on crime, and not a supporter of the police and not doing enough to back the blue. So even if it's for political calculation, she should do it. I mean, first of all, it's the right thing. But second of all, imagine if she did do that. It would be a political. It would take something away from Bruce Blakeman being able to go after her politically, even if she alienates her base. Right?
I agree with you. But the likelihood is that Bruce Blakeman will have law enforcement support throughout the state, so she doesn't benefit there, and she can't afford to lose minorities because if she had lost them last time, they were the difference of her getting over the top against Zeldin.
No, I hear what you're saying, sadly. But listen, there are many minorities who also want to keep the streets safe and appreciate our law enforcement. But you're right. She doesn't want to alienate some individuals that she feels she will need. to get elected. That's for sure. And what a sad situation that is, Al. And let's just pray for Sergeant Duran and for his family. And let's hope that the governor maybe does do the right thing, or at least that he can get out pending appeal and then he wins on appeal. Let's pray, because to me, this is a complete injustice. Al, thank you very, very much. Always great to hear from you. And we'll continue with your calls, you guys, after the break. 1-800-848-9222. But first, support our heroes.
The Rita Cosby Show presents Support Our Heroes.
And this is the Tunnel to Towers Foundation Support Our Heroes segment with a very powerful story from Southgate, Michigan, where a chapter of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution recently recognized and honored World War II veteran Charles Smalley for his service and patriotism on his 102nd birthday. They gave him a challenge coin and an America 250 hat, and also talked about his lifelong service to this country, and especially what he did in World War II. The veteran was born in 1924. He graduated from high school in 1942, and he was the first graduating class of that high school to join World War II. He served in the U.S. Army Air Corps, which was one of the critical combat arms of the Army during the war. By the way, the U.S. Army Air Corps saved my father. Literally, they're the precursors of the Air Force, and sent down a note to my father and his men telling them which way to walk and that they were free. So how beautiful to see this. So he was a member of that, and he was honorably discharged back in 1945 as a sergeant. How beautiful. Well, bravo to him, 102 years old, veteran Charles Smalley, and of course, all the members of the Greatest Generation and their families. And everybody, all it takes is just $11 a month. Just $11 a month can make a huge difference to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Be sure to check them out at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the Rita Cosby Show.
Well, tomorrow night will also be a big night. Artemis is going to be splashing down, by the way, tomorrow. It's supposed to be going 25,000 miles an hour, returning to Earth. That's faster than the way I was driving in high school. A little bit faster, at least. I'm being facetious. I was a good driver, sort of. But Artemis is coming down at 8:07 p.m. So if all things go well, it's going to splash down in San Diego right around that time. And boy, that will be history in the making to see them. Apparently, they're going to be wobbly. It's going to be hard to walk, obviously, at first. They're going to need medical treatment and getting used to being back down on Earth. Also, we'll be following the Sergeant Duran case, too, as well. There is so much to talk about. And also, we'll see what happens, because President Trump is, again, sending a message to Iran. This is not what we agreed to. There should be no tolls on the Strait of Hormuz. Where is all this headed? We'll have a lot more tomorrow night, guys.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Tap the banner or visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.